Good evening and welcome to Frankly Speaking, where truth is our mission, reality our realm, said as we see it and frankly as well. 3,000
but it's the next
horsepower.
iteration of an existing system.
But it's a design, it's not manufacturing anything.
I think there should be, there are restrictions. You have to be licensed to carry a weapon.
Addiction, and I think that if we took a more compassionate approach, we might find more of a solution.
Radical swing of the pendulum. Now we're, it's more liberal, more progressive, more.
It's time for us to honor those folks who, send comments to it.
And good evening, or I should say good afternoon or good evening, whichever works for you, because Frankly Speaking is on matinee and at prime time, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Don't miss our episodes. We're on fire here. Anyway, this is where, what is the truth is our mission, reality our realm, said as we see it and frankly as well. I'm Joe Spina, along with Paul Crowley.
Hey, Joe.
How are you, Paul?
I'm pretty good. We got a lot to talk about.
Oh, I
Sanctuary
guess.
cities and sanctuary schools.
What a response we got from the rhetorical question, which we'll reintroduce right after I do my Frankly Joe.
Okay.
And then you do your Frankly Paul, because
Okay.
frankly, Paul, you know what you're talking about. Me, that's a different issue. Newsflash, folks. You're not going to read about it in the Lynn item, or the Boston Globe, or for that matter, New York Times. And you're not going to see it on ABC, CBS, or NBC, or any of the cable outlets. But you're going to hear it here on Frankly Speaking. Listen carefully. Christ is alive and well in Lynn, Mass. Get that news flash? Christ is alive and well. I thought he was dead because no one wants to talk about Christianity anymore, Paul. And it's a very good thing. Despite the consistent crusade by the secular left to marginalize faith-based institutions in particular, and religion in general, this Sunday in Lynn, Mass, at St. Pius Church, a new generation of faithful were confirmed amidst the standing room only flock. It was a beautiful thing and sanctifying. God smiled.
Right. So, it's interesting that you talk about the secular left.
Yeah.
And sometimes I struggle with what that actually means, so I'm wondering maybe if you could help me to better understand what you mean when you refer to something as the secular left. What is that?
Well, secular is really complete separation of church and state. There is no theology, there's no reverence in the secular universe. Our founding fathers predicated the Constitution, our Bill of Rights, on the Creator. The secular nations, Rome was a secular society. A citizen had nothing to do with ethnicity, had nothing to do with race, had nothing to do with tribe. Anybody, as long as you were a citizen according to the laws of Rome.
Right.
That's a secular society. The Soviet Union were a secular society. China is a secular society. But most of Europe throughout its history was Christian, was not secular. And it was religious-based, Judeo-Christian.
Right.
Remember, we used to hear that growing up all the time?
Because they talk about, like, Iran as being a secular...
Oh, no. On the contrary, they're theocratic.
Right.
In fact, Iran is so theocratic, and so now is Turkey.
Right. That their government is based on the religion.
Religion supersedes
Right.
the Constitution,
Right.
or whatever, of the government.
So the secular left would be those non-God believing people on the left?
Well, I'm not going to go so far as to say that they're atheistic, but generally speaking, they're not very tied into a religious...
Because I remember one time you talked to me about the fact that there were a couple of things that government despises, but one of them was religion, and the family was another one, right? Yeah. And help me to understand what you mean by that.
You're putting me on the spot here.
Yeah.
Folks, I've always said the government's in competition, wants control. It wants to centralize, and every time we have a war, every time we have a crisis, government gets bigger and stronger. Okay? It feeds because people become dependent. They sell individual liberties in order for security. You agree with that?
Yep.
Okay. But the whole purpose of government or power, which is what government's all about, is to perpetuate itself. What's the competition to the state? The competition is your family.
To
first.
your hearts and minds, right?
Sure.
Right.
You're controlled by parents or your religion. Those things. That's where your moral base, that's where you learn about right and wrong. As a matter of fact, let me mention this about confirmation because it fits right into here. The whole purpose of confirmation, and I suspect it's the same in when someone goes a bar mitzvah in the Jewish faith.
Right.
And what it is in childhood, this is pre-confirmation, pre-bar mitzvah. In childhood, you, Paul, me, Pedro, Dave, were told what to do. And we were rewarded when we did the right thing and punished when we did the wrong thing.
Right.
That's how we learned our value system.
Right.
When one becomes an adult, which would be post-confirmation in my faith, in Christianity and Catholicism, you do what is right on your own. You are now responsible. That's the key. You're responsible for your actions. You have free will. Our society today is taking out the equation of responsibility.
Right.
Everyone's a victim, but no one's responsible for their actions, it seems. And I found it refreshing, and that's why I wrote that little piece, that here you had St. Pius this Sunday. You couldn't find a parking spot if you had a tricycle. That was jammed. The place was, it was a beautiful sight to see these young women, young girls I should say, young men, and their families and loved ones all there.
Right.
And it's really nice to see that.
Right, and it has, hopefully that's a sign of things to come where there's
That's
a
what
shift.
made me feel so good. I'm thinking that maybe there's going to be a introduction, so to speak. These young people are saying, hold it. I don't care about, Wall Street and BMWs. There are more important things in life
Right.
than material,
Yeah, absolutely.
And I just thought, and folks, let me beg your indulgence. I want to talk about one other thing, Paul, and then you got to get to yours. In a confirmation, there are 7 gifts that come from, in the Catholic faith, the Holy Spirit and the Trinity. And listen to what these gifts are that one receives at confirmation: wisdom, understanding, counsel, fortitude, knowledge, piety, and a little fear of the Lord. That's a wonderful,
Well, what about a pair of Nike sneakers or a cell phone? Or
Oh, no.
those don't count as gifts?
No. By the way, there's nothing wrong with those things,
No, I know.
right?
But it's material versus
Sure.
character-based. Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
So you got a little Paul thing. You got some interesting quotes there. I want to, folks, listen carefully to these.
Okay, frankly, Paul. So this is a quote from Jesse Jackson.
Don't you love it?
Yes. In politics, an organized minority is a political majority. In like vein, Will Durant noted that the political machine triumphs because it is a united minority against a divided majority. And as the great Enlightenment political philosopher,
Philosophize, yeah.
philosophized, it is unnatural for a majority to rule, for a majority can seldom be organized and unite for a specific action, but a minority can. So, it is certain that an organized minority group such as ECHO can impose its will by getting Lynn designated as sanctuary city despite the wishes of the unwilling but disorganized majority or citizens of Lynn. Or are the times are changing? And
Well, I
think
asked you that question. Are the times are changing, Paul?
So, first of all, let me get back to this point that Will Durant made. The political machine triumphs because it is a united minority acting against a divided majority.
Exactly.
We can talk about how, at the federal level right now, you've got the minority, which let's just call it the progressive left, which is essentially a big part, almost all of the Democrat Party, right? The progressive left. They're the minority party right
May
now.
Day yesterday.
Right. And they are undermining the majority. We have the Republicans control the House, the Senate, and the presidency. And at every turn, they're being undermined by the progressive left, which has the benefit of the media, Hollywood, the financial sector in large cases, and they control a lot of the institutions of government and
Academia.
and academia.
Right.
So there is a minority out there that is
An
essentially
organized
dictating.
minority, Paul.
Organized.
Because if it isn't organized, it's useless.
Right.
Folks, the Soviet Union was created by 3,000 folks known as Bolsheviks that overthrew an empire of 100 million people. So a very small number of people. ISIS has got 30,000 at most,
Right.
right? North Korea, population is probably at most 20 million, and they're threatening World War III and annihilation. So a small group of people, organized, can do some dastardly things.
Right.
And the problem is, Paul, most people, these folks out here, they got to go to work.
Right.
They got to make a living. They're preoccupied with other things. They don't have the leisure time that
Right.
these folks have.
And that gets to the point about, what we were pointing here, that ECHO is trying to get the city council to vote for it to be a sanctuary city.
That's right.
Right, so there's a very small group of them that are pushing for the sanctuary city thing, and they're making an argument because they're so noisy and organized, that sounds as if it's the will of the city of Lynn. But
And the politicians buckle to it.
right, and if you go and you talk to individuals and you look at our comments, I mean, were they all 100% opposed to Lynn being a sanctuary city?
You asked the question last week, and I asked the question. We looked right into the camera, and it was a simple question. Are you in favor, or should Lynn be designated as a sanctuary city, and should it be an issue in this election cycle?
Right, right.
And, Paul, we have never received as many comments on a simple show
Right.
as we did here,
Right.
loaded with them, and every single one of them
Was no.
is no.
Right.
And we'll get to some of them.
So so folks back at home, if you are, let's just start with the organized minority. You folks from ECHO, you feel strong about this, you fight your battles and all that kind of stuff. But I'm here to say that in addition to you fighting your battles, the disorganized majority here, which would be the taxpayers, the voters, the majority of the people of the city of Lynn need to really understand this premise so that they can make sure that.
But they did, Paul, and this is why there's some hope. The unions came out strong for the two schools. Teachers unions, all unions.
There you go, and then the disorganized majority said absolutely not.
Because they organized. Whatever you want to say about Castle, he organized
Right.
the majority.
Right.
That's what happened.
Right.
So that on an issue that they understood. Now, why Trump won is effectively for the same thing. Now, you can argue they didn't win the popular vote. That's California. That's Illinois. That's New York.
Right.
All right?
Massachusetts.
Okay. Or you can throw Massachusetts in a mix. But the point of the matter is this. When the majority becomes organized, which can be dangerous, because an organized majority can suppress the minority.
Right.
So it's a double-edged sword.
Which, by the way, what was going on for the past 8 years? Don't you think that there was an effort to suppress the minority by, characterizing anybody that disagreed with them as racist or, bigoted or?
Well, I think Ann Coulter and Milo and all of the ones who've been shut off speaking at the universities.
But that was happening. Just to be clear, that was happening when the Democrats were in power. Well, when Obama was the president.
Paul, they have never. Wait a minute. Let me ask you this: how many news outlets in the United States are diverse that represent all views?
None of them.
One, allegedly. Well, a few. Breitbart, the Daily Caller, a few blogs, and Fox News, right?
Okay, so you were talking about internet too. I thought you meant just on the TV.
Well, even if we talk about it, what percentage of reporters, journalists, so-called journalists, are registered Republicans?
It's like less than 10%. Probably even a lot
Probably almost zero.
Right.
Okay. What percentage are in the Democratic Party lean left?
90 plus.
So how are they going to write? Are they going to write? Look, I'm biased. I'm a conservative. I think I am, a libertarian, fundamentally, right? I don't like the collective. I'm not fond of big government. You know, I like to be able to make my own decisions and live my own life. You know, this whole argument about the wall. People don't understand that the wall is a metaphor. It's like you folks, you put a little fence up, a little picket fence that says, by the way, this is my property, this is my world. Anybody can jump over that fence,
Right.
but you're letting them know this is my, don't trespass. That's all the wall's about. It may stop some, but it's fundamentally letting the world know that this is our property.
Right.
If you don't believe in, and this the left doesn't believe in public property, basically, right? They believe communism,
They don't
socialism.
believe in private property, you mean?
They don't believe in private property. No, they believe in public property.
Okay.
So the United States, you see, doesn't have sovereignty by their mind. It's open borders for everybody. I mean, anybody in the world.
Right.
I mean, the school committee this week, and let me find it because it's kind of fascinating. And folks, do yourself a favor and read what they say. The school committee, right off the get-go, this was in the April 27th edition of the item.
Yeah. So it's
And it said here, I don't think you have it in your packet. It said the school committee adopted a policy to protect, whatever that means, to protect students from U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement. The school committee adopted a policy. Now, question, isn't ICE a federal agency?
It is.
Aren't you supposed to obey federal law?
Yes.
So they're trying to supersede that? They're trying to say, ICE, you can't come in here? You can't do your job?
That's what they're trying to say, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, is there some type of insanity in that?
Well, you know, and you and I talked about this over the weekend, and I think it's a good time to talk about this. So I was listening to a presentation on it was being presented by the not-for-profit legal entity,
Yeah.
legal aid type of organization. And the woman was an immigration attorney, and she spent the entire time, and everybody had to go, and she wanted to talk more, and she was just nonstop. And all she talked about, now remember, this is she's an attorney. She works for a nonprofit organization, so she is funded by tax dollars, okay? Primarily by tax dollars.
Mm-hmm.
She's an officer of the court, right? Remember that, an officer of the court. In her entire diatribe was focused on helping people who are in this country illegally maneuver through a system and force everybody else to follow the legal laws so that they can continue to operate illegally. It was amazing.
Yeah, and that's an Alice in Wonderland. This is the perversion of language and mindset and ideas. Nobody doesn't understand the dilemma of a child that was born in the United States to illegal parents who's been in this country for 15 years. Nobody is talking about ripping that family and chucking it out.
But that's what they'll tell you, though.
Of course, but that's not it. What they're saying is those gangbangers that came over the border, M13, is that the name of them? I don't know. what it is.
MS-13, yeah.
And who are wreaking havoc. Look, last week, folks, we gave you a stat. Listen to this. 3.5% of the population of the United States are undocumented, according to Pew Research, right?
Okay.
Probably higher, but 3.5%. Of the 3.5%, Paul, they're the undocumented, right? They commit 20% or more of the murders, way out of proportion to their numbers and the crimes. So there is a violent element. So when they make that argument that no more than the average, they're being disingenuous.
And even if it was more than the average, why would we be so?
Shouldn't be here in the first place.
Why should we be pounding the table saying that we need to let them in and tolerate the crime that they bring with them?
I have no idea, Paul. But let me go one step further. You talked about coming in and rights. Here's what else the school committee said. They said students have the same right to a free public education and be treated equally. Well, if you're a non-citizen, do you have any rights?
According to the school department, yes. And isn't there some type of federal Department of Education rule that's been passed down to the states and further on to the local school districts to that effect?
I have no idea. This is what I do know. I do know that when
you can't ask, there's a law in the books that says you cannot ask somebody that comes into your school to sign up what their immigration status is.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
It's really getting a little insane, you know? Now, that's the organized majority.
Hey, you want to hear something funny?
Yeah.
You can't do that. But when I transferred my daughter from private school to English high school,
Yeah.
right? I went in there, and they were asking me for everything. They weren't going to do anything until I had her transcripts from the private school.
These kids don't have transcripts. There's no records that come with them. We have a health...
What's going on?
Well, wait a minute, Paul. We have a health crisis in this country. You know, this country was very effective at curbing contagious diseases.
Eradicating it.
Eradicating them.
Yeah.
They're coming back in like steroids. You get me? They're coming back gangbusters, to which there's no immunization. Nobody talks about that. I mean, that's a subject not spoken. We better be careful. I want to get to an adage. Can you check up an adage for me, Pedro? And, on the axioms and adages and proverbs, Paul, you're going to love this one. You can read it, Paul, because I'm sick and tired of talking all the time.
I'm sick and tired of you talking all the time. No, I'm just
Go
kidding. All right, so I love this. This is from A.A. Milne, who was he was Winnie the Pooh's.
Yeah, he's the creator of Winnie the Pooh. Would you believe it?
Okay, so, and I've heard something to this effect in the past. So the third-rate mind you, is only happy when it is thinking with the majority. So it always wants to be part of the majority.
Exactly.
The second-rate mind, much better, but only second-rate, is only happy when it is thinking with the minority, right? And then the first-rate mind is only happy when it is thinking, and that is so critical. I mean, there's the people who do the critical thinking in this world, and then there's the people who watch the sitcoms every week, and and there's nothing wrong with doing that and all that kind of stuff, but the entertainment piece of the world is the distraction piece of the world. The real thinking happens by people who are only happy when they're thinking, right?
Yeah, Pedro Diaz is a good example, and Dave Riley.
That's right.
Great examples of individual, thoughtful thinkers, and that's why, frankly speaking, is what it is. I mean, without those folks in the background, we're just kind of puppets. But the other thing about Winnie the Pooh, or Mr. Winnie the Pooh, is he had something pretty profound to say about the Old Testament, folks, and I just throw it out there for thought.
Yep, go ahead.
And the Old Testament is responsible, he claims, for more atheism, agnosticism, disbelief, call it what you will, than any book ever written. It has emptied more churches than all the counter attractions of cinema, motorbike, bicycle, and golf course. Now, at first I was kind of put back by that comment, and then I try to put in my first-rate mind and think about it. The Old Testament is pretty brutal when you think about it, isn't it?
It is, yep.
So maybe there's something to it, which what I witnessed was the New Testament at the confirmation, right?
Yeah.
The good news.
The good news, yeah. Yeah, that's right.
Polly, I want you to think about things, folks. It is time for things to think about. This one's amazing. Go ahead, Polly.
Oh, I'm reading? Okay.
Oh, what are you supposed to do? Get on your iPhone there?
I was looking for tips. Okay, so things to think about.
Yeah.
The percentage of Africa that is wilderness is 28%, right?
Yeah.
So unpopulated, is that what wilderness means?
I guess. It means
it
like
a-
Lynn Woods.
Yeah.
Right? Beavers and stuff like that.
Woods and all that kind
Yeah.
of stuff. And the percentage of North America that is wilderness is 38%.
Would you ever believe that? There's more wilderness in North America than Africa. We think of Africa as one big jungle.
Right.
But compared to the North America, we actually have
Now,
more wilderness.
is that, I mean, does that have anything to do with the fact that Africa is old world and we're new world? I think
Well-
we just haven't had a chance to get on the trees yet.
Polly, if I'm not mistaken, Africa was pre-exploration, and North America pre-exploration, right? We're pretty much living in a different time zone, right?
Yep.
I mean, I don't think too many Native Americans had the wheel. I'm not denigrating anybody. I'm just talking about, the progress of technology and wherewithals in the New World, North and South America, was, back in time.
Okay.
Hadn't gotten up to speed yet.
But it is interesting, 38%. I mean, if you look in Lynn, we haven't got a couple of acres to build a school.
Wait a minute. Yeah, that's a funny point. Yeah, we don't have an acre, but we got Lynn Woods, one of the largest municipal woods in the country.
Right.
Right? Now, you want to hear the best one? Most people think of Massachusetts as wall-to-wall concrete, right?
Right.
Because we are, folks, believe this, we are the most dense, no, I'm sorry, New Jersey is, but we're number 2 as the most densely populated state in the Union.
So
Our density, believe it or not, is twice the density of China.
Is that right?
yeah.
And China's got. But now, what about? I mean, it's funny because it's all Eastern Mass too, right? I mean, probably from Worcester in is where the real density is. If you go Worcester west, I mean, I went to a 2-day retreat with my trade association in the beginning of April, and I had to drive out to Lenox, Mass. Beautiful out there, but just beyond Worcester, all of a sudden there's nothing. Trees and.
So what's that tell you? We don't take that much space.
Right.
Folks, when I was teaching geography many, many years ago, so this is outdated. But at that time, there was a little blurb, in critical thinking, and it said that if you were to build a box, a theoretical box, right? It was a mile long, a mile wide, and a mile deep. You could put all of humanity in there and chuck them into the Colorado River, and that would be it. Now, because our population increased, you'd have to make a little bigger coffin, right?
Right.
Think about this. Gillette Stadium on a Sunday afternoon seats more people than Salem, Swampscott, and Peabody combined.
Wow.
When you think about probably, maybe that's an exaggeration, but they're about 70,000, right?
Right.
Salem's got 35,000. Swampscott's got about 15, 12, 15, 18, whatever. So that's 53, and Peabody's a little bigger than that. So, but if you took Peabody and Salem, the entire population of those two cities, it's about what's at Gillette Stadium in a football game.
Right.
And when some of those stadiums, like Ann Arbor, Michigan,
Right. And
they have
and
more
the
people
Rose
than
Bowl,
places like Wyoming, for God's sake.
103,000, and in the one in California where USC plays. So.
So some of the stuff is proportional. Now, here's the key. But Dave, Pedro, make sure you get me some scissors because I want to take a sample of Paul's hair. Very important. Then we're going to send it out. Why is that, Paul?
You want to see if I have any zinc or copper in my hair?
I do. I want to know whether you have zinc or copper or what.
I would say you have it. For
What
sure.
little hair I have, I don't know. But why?
So, and I don't know where the hell you got this. Oh, excuse my language, but I don't know where the heck you got this comment. But it says intelligent people have more zinc and copper in their hair than less intelligent people. Is that what you're saying?
No, what I'm saying is that my 92-year-old sister sent me an email, and she does this all the time with all these different things, and I just cherry-picked a few of them.
Right.
And things that you should think about, and I was shocked at this one here. So, yeah, I'm gonna make sure that we all
So if you have copper in your hair, does that make you a redhead? Because I used to be a redhead.
I
So
don't
maybe
know.
I'm pretty
Copper
smart.
is kind of a bronzy color, right? So if you want to know whether you're a child or whether maybe it's better you don't,
Right.
and that's...
Well, just as an aside, nowadays with all this interest in heritage and where you came from and all that kind of stuff, you send in your DNA to, I don't know what's the group that's doing it, but they'll tell you where you're from.
Yeah.
You see the commercial and they say, "Oh, I thought I was from Germany, but actually I'm from Australia," or whatever it was.
Yeah.
I'm very afraid of that.
You?
Yeah, I don't want anybody to know a sample of my DNA.
Paul, I don't like taking
that-
MRIs or CAT scans.
No, but I mean, just from a privacy perspective, don't you think, isn't there kind of a reason to be concerned about, giving your DNA to somebody else?
I'm concerned about a government that wants to control every action,
Right.
everything I do.
Right.
So therefore, I don't agree with the liberal, secular left. I want to be left alone. I'll manage fine, thank you very much. You know, they talk about second opinions. Remember we did a little blurb that 88% of the time a second opinion from a physician differs from the first opinion. Doesn't that make you think a little bit?
Right?
Huh?
Right. It makes it clear to me.
Yeah.
If I ever get an opinion that, I don't care. If I have any diagnosis, I'm going to get a second opinion.
And maybe more.
And it doesn't. And it could be that the thing is, if somebody says, "Oh, you're fine," and you think there's something wrong, you should get a second opinion. Then it shouldn't be just when you're told that you have cancer or you have some.
Oh, please. I spent most of my life being a confirmed hypochondriac, and that's existing,
Right.
not living.
Well, I mean, nowadays, don't you think that people kind of get the contract illnesses after they hear about all the symptoms on TV?
Paul, they just said that you should eat all the fat in the world. Fatty food is good for you. There's a lot of baloney about cholesterol. Okay.
A lot of baloney.
Meanwhile,
No pun
everybody's
intended.
been chewing the Lipitor and Baycol and the rest of it, and their muscles are falling apart on them. Okay.
Right.
So, you know what I say? I say avoid as much as you can. The least you know, no stress, no strain. Live a happy life. Folks, I have 6 gorgeous granddaughters. I have 2 lovely daughters. And I am so pleased to say this. I want you to tell me, or try to guess, now that I let the cat out of the bag, what do bulletproof vests, fire escapes, and windshield wipers, and laser printers have in common, Paul?
For everybody at home, if Joe's hint didn't give it to you, they were all invented by women.
That's right, and don't you forget that, my friend. These women know what they're doing.
That's right.
I hope you have a few employed down
And
in
with the
Bliss.
exception of the laser printer,
Huh?
with the exception of the laser printer, they were always to improve your safety. Right?
A laser printer could be considered safety too.
Well, maybe.
I don't know. So, we got that all taken care of. Now, Paul, I want to go to these comments because it's very rare that you get this
They're
much
all
supply.
going one way.
Yeah,
Right, we got
some
a
are
lot of
long,
them.
some are short. So let me look at this one here, random. Oh, before I go into comment, I have to thank sweet Jane Kale. I mean, she's so lovely. You know what happened, Paul? I get an email or a Facebook thing says, check your sticker, inspection sticker.
Right.
I said, what? So I take a peek. It was 2 months ago, expired. I had to sneak around for 2 days. I couldn't find a place to do it. Thank you, Jane. But that's what I love about our show now. The people, they call, they're helpful. She's a lovely lady.
She is.
And her daughter-in-law just had a birthday. I believe her name is Angela, named after the angels, and she is an angel.
Yes.
So, and yet the most of our Pauls support illegals coming to the city. Go figure. Yeah, that's what I say. They care about their party's ideology more than the safety of the people.
That's a good point.
You bet your life it is.
Right.
And
So-
it should be a
so
big issue.
Say that again.
I'll read it again. And yet most of our Pauls support illegals coming to the city. Go figure. They care more about their party ideology than the safety of the people here.
That's back to that organized minority.
That's right.
And by the way, God forbid, you know what's 10 times worse than any Republican speaking out against the policies of the Democrats? It's a Democrat speaking out against the policies of the Democrats. You know what I mean? They do not allow it. It's just not acceptable.
So in
even
this city,
even if somebody's wrong, you do not.
I want to ask you, Paul, you've been down the road a bit, right?
Yep.
You've been bruised up a little bit, banged up a little bit in the political world, huh?
Sure.
You got a few elbows. In Lynn, is there an organized minority?
Absolutely.
called the Democratic City Committee.
Yes, it
correct?
is. Yes.
And they pick or they promote who's going to be a rep, who's going to be.
They clear the field.
Right.
They, and it's interesting. So, let's just talk about the state delegation since like the 90s, right? Since the early 90s. Bob Fennell, early 90s, became a state rep, Eastland. The only reason he even had an opponent ever, an opponent of any quality, was because as long as he wanted to stay, the Democrats would not run anybody against him.
And the Republicans didn't have enough people in a
Right,
phone booth, right?
Right.
Okay.
Senator McGee, 1996, he became state rep. The only reason he became senator was because Chip Clancy ran for and was elected mayor. And as soon as he moved up, Steve Walsh moved into that position.
Musical cheers, Paul.
The closest you get to a race is that first, that's the only time it's allowable. And even that, it's really not. For example, recently, after Steve Walsh moved on, that seat opened, the West Lynn Nahant seat opened up, and it was set up that, at least this word on the street I was hearing was it was Brendan's. Brendan's next in line.
Inherited.
Right, but Charlie Gallo, who was also a big part of the Democratic City Committee, wanted to have that seat, so he went for it. So there was a race, and Brendan ended up winning. But that was the only time. That's the only time in the whole cycle where it's allowable.
Brendan won significantly with a big margin.
Right,
and
which
so
meant
what
that
happened is that Charlie, they cut him loose. They decided, here's the guy we want. And that Democratic City Committee if you deviate, they're worse than the mafia. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They do the blood oath.
I can speak to it. When I had the support of the Democratic City Committee the first time I ran.
Yeah.
And during my first election, my first term, I got involved in the issues. I heard the things. I decided to go this way or that way, depending on my conscience. I voted my conscience. And from time to time, I went against the Democratic City Committee. And when it was time for re-election, they wouldn't support me.
Of course.
The leadership wouldn't support me.
Of course. I mean, that shouldn't surprise you. Comment 4.
But I think people at home would be curious to know that. So it had nothing to do with me as my abilities. It had to do with me deviating from the dogma of their party, right, of their group. They'll decide what I'm going to do. They'll get me elected, and then they'll tell me how to vote.
You remember what happened a couple of weeks ago? There was an event called Easter, right?
Yep.
And the reason why I have Easter, because this wonderful, wonderful Son of God came to earth to preach the gospel, otherwise known as good news. They nailed him to a cross, Paul. They put thorns on his forehead. So much for doing the right thing and being a nice person,
Right.
okay?
Oh, I know.
Think about that.
You can't compare me to him, though.
What?
You can't compare me to him, though. I'm just a regular guy.
You're not quite Jesus. All of the school committee must go. Can you believe this one? A sick group of people for sure. Lynn is 4th from the bottom. I don't know if this is true. And the 200-plus state school district, 4 categories of academic achievement. Is that true? It has a 25% dropout rate. They will deny this, but these are the see more. I can't comment on it because I don't know if those are the facts. We'll have to look that up.
Right. Yeah, can we get the full comment on that for next week, guys? Because it looks like you could have clicked on and got more for that one.
There's a simple no.
Yeah, no, Lynn, no to immigrants, period.
Lynn
Yeah,
has this-
like Barack Obama, remember he said that?
What?
You will be able to keep your doctor, period. Your premiums will not go up, period. That's what this guy's saying. No, Lynn, no immigrants, period.
That's not going to happen. I mean, Lynn has its problems as it is. I was in Lynn in March and I saw condemned buildings which could be used for other things. Are there many of those, Paul?
Less and less. I mean, there are some. I mean, you got the old a famous building there, you know, the Hawthorne, and then around the corner there's a building with a big red X on it that's next to the Harbor Lofts, and there's some empty buildings around.
Folks, let's
Not like it was in the past, though. It's come a long way.
Yeah, but we still have them.
Yep.
Well, let me say this. I was doing Swampscott the other day. They're building all over the place. And Swampscott's only 3 square miles.
We're building a lot too. I mean, we're building the Market Basket. They're putting an addition on North Shore Community College. We're getting ready to put 350 units on the Lynn.
We're getting ready. I'm talking about it's happening.
No, but those first 2 projects are live. Those are going.
Go to Village Square. Do you see what they're building there?
Yeah.
All right. And you go on Humphrey Street. They're building. They got a lot of land. It's like cluster zoning, and they're putting very expensive houses in a small geographic area where everybody shares like a common grass or whatever. I mean, and like I said, they're only 3 square miles.
Right.
We're 11 square miles.
Right.
And we got a big woods. So, here we go. By no means should Lynn become a sanctuary city. And it goes on. You see this one here, Paul?
Yep.
I think Lynn has enough problems. And on it goes. With Lynn's financial woes, gentlemen, I would say it's not possible, especially with Trump in office. We as a city will see little federal help. That point you made. If we're going to argue and try to make Lynn a sanctuary city, it's counterproductive.
Right. Well,
It goes against our interests.
I'll tell you what. And when I was on the city council, and to this day, there is a grant that we get every year from the federal government. It's called the Shannon Grant. It was a competitive grant, and it allows us to do a lot of good things, which is to focus on the gangs and so forth. It's Antonio Gonzalez, I think. Anyway, there's a fellow that he's out there in the community every day, beating the pavements, trying to get to know these kids and help them to make better choices in life and so forth. But that Shannon Grant, every single year it goes up for, when there's budget cut issues, Shannon Grant is always one of those that might get cut, and everybody, by the way, all the same people who are going to say we need sanctuary cities are screaming, you can't let that money go. And now when that's at risk, they're almost like they don't care. It seems odd, doesn't it?
Let me ask you, it's an observation, I'm not quite sure. Do you sense an upkick in violent crime in the city of Lynn over the last few years? Has there been, or is
it seems like there's a rash of it lately, yes.
It's ratcheted up, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Is there any correlation between this and the pervasive attitude we have toward, I mean, if you won't enforce laws, then why should anybody follow laws?
Right. Well, and what's interesting and really, to me, a travesty is that the organized minority will blame it on Donald Trump's rhetoric.
Yeah, they'll blame it on the conservatives. They always do.
Right.
Heartless.
Right. But the problem is it's the organized left's response to Donald Trump that's causing it.
Paul, if someone walked into your house uninvited and sat in your living room and went into your refrigerator, you wouldn't like that, would you? Well, similarly, if someone uninvited comes in your country and enjoys the benefits of your country at the expense of someone else, don't people realize that?
Right.
I mean, once again, folks, there's nothing wrong with immigration. We need it. It's a good thing. And I'll tell you right here and now, I've said this, Paul, consistently. There's no way that you're going to deport the 11 million who are currently here. No way. So forget it. You're going to have to absorb them.
Right.
And it's going to take time. But you can shut down the borders. You can enforce immigration laws, which are already working.
And get rid of the troublemakers.
Get rid of them immediately, if not, which is happening, and shut down immigration anywhere for a few years.
Right.
Just so that we can get ourselves together. And that would take care of the problem.
Absolutely. And you've been saying that, faithfully for a very long time.
It's a simple formula, and I don't understand why anybody wants to fight it.
Right, and we were talking about this again. It was off air, but it's a good position to talk about it. So, back in the day, when your parents emigrated to this country, right? They had to come through Ellis Island and do all that kind of stuff, and they needed to somebody needed to vouch for them. and they needed to prove that they weren't going to be a drain on society, right?
Well, yeah, you couldn't come into this country unless you had a sponsor.
Right. So in other
You
words,
could not be a burden on the state.
Exactly. So think about that. You couldn't be a burden on the state, and that was if you were legal, right? And today, the outrage is that these folks who are undocumented, illegal, however you want to describe them, are in a lot of cases, especially like the unaccompanied minors, automatically become wards of the state immediately.
But there's two other things that happened in the past that they don't do anymore. One was they stopped them in Ellis Island, quarantined them, gave them physical examinations, and would not let them into this
Right,
country
made sure that-
if they had any communicable disease.
Right. Do you know that to this day that if a load of flowers comes in from, say, South America, and they find any bugs in them, they will not allow the whole thing in. They'll quarantine us. They send it back. You didn't prep it before it came. In other words, they take that stuff seriously in that they don't want, infectious disease or the possibility of infectious disease to come through the transmission of.
How do you control that with illegal immigration coming over the border? Can you do it?
You don't
In other
even
words,
try.
at Ellis Island, the doctor examined everybody coming off the boat, my mother and the rest of them. If you had a cough, they didn't let you out of there until they made sure you were healthy. That's
Right.
done. The other thing that you failed to talk about is that my mother and my father and my siblings had to, when they went for citizenship, the ones who weren't born here, right? They had to learn American history and take a test in order to become citizens.
And now the American history isn't even required of naturally born people in this country.
Paul, that's the sad part of it. When you remember when you got your driver's license? Remember you had to answer all the rules of the road, you had to study that, and you had to pass that before you could do the car?
Yep.
My mother and father, before they could sign up to be American citizens, right? They had to pass a U.S. history test.
Right.
Folks, we don't do simple, smart things like that anymore. It didn't offend my mother and father. They were happy to do it.
Right. And they wanted to assimilate. Right.
Of course they did. They want to become Americani.
They could assimilate and maintain their heritage at the same time.
Paul, my 6 grandchildren are 1/4 breeds. Okay? All of my father's offspring, when you talk about the DNA and the family tree, we're dinosaurs, the thoroughbreds. As I tease my kids. My bride, Scotch, English, Irish. My children married who knows what, right? So I have 3 grandkids who have brown eyes, dark hair, and I have 4 grandkids who look like Vikings. You figure it out, all right?
Right.
So this is the way it's supposed to be in America. That's the way I was taught. Right. And my father had no problem with me, quote unquote, marrying outside of the tribe.
Right.
Now there's certain ethnicities that is taboo.
Right.
Right?
Well, you were saying that about China and Japan, right?
Well, I'm saying that China and Japan are not allowing any immigration whatsoever.
Right.
They want to remain
Right.
pure,
Right.
so to speak.
Right.
So you're not going to find any third world minorities, or for that matter, in Korea.
Right.
Right?
Not that anybody would want to go there.
Speaking of which,
By the way, I always marvel that, if we're such a racist country, why do they just keep coming and coming and coming?
well, you tell me, Paul. Not a bad place to be,
No.
All right. You think anybody's really starving in this country?
No. No.
It's here. It's a
The
matter of
last
degree.
time, I can't. There's no way that people are starving in this country. If anything, they're living a life of malnutrition, potentially, because they're not eating well.
All I know is one thing. My was thrilled when he was diagnosed, with had a X amount of time left on this earth. Thankfully he was deep into the 80s at the time, and he had to face the reality. And I'm the guy that that my brother and sisters volunteered to talk to my father about these things. I asked him about where he would like to his final resting place. He goes, what are you, crazy? He goes, this is my adopted home. This is my mother. He looked at this country as his mother, as his adopted mother. That was their mindset.
Wow.
And, you know, you have to love those, they called them mustache Pete's back then, you know what I mean? I had the mustache, you know, and a chickly and all that type of stuff. They were marvelous, and from all ethnicities.
Right.
I mean, my neighborhood was so great. It had Albanians, you know, who fled World War II. It had a bunch of Russian Jews and German Jews. I grew up in a wonderful environment. English, or whatever you want to talk about. Talk about diversity. And we play football and basketball with each other. We would dine at each other's home for the different cuisine. I used to love potato Lockies, you know what I mean? Whatever right? And it was just, I cannot tell you, folks, how wonderful it was growing up in the city of Lynn. And that's why I'm here. It's my comfort zone. Don't forget, I was a salesman for Johnson & Johnson and the Incarnation. I traveled the country, and I had some very responsible jobs. I chose to come back to Lynn. I didn't have to.
Right.
I chose, because this is my comfort zone. I like it here.
Me too.
You too,
Yep.
Paul. And, you know, you have the way to fly. Paul, we got about 3 minutes left. I want to go through these because we should honor them.
Right.
Pay public sector versus private. And this is an interesting point. What are the average salaries of teachers, firemen, policemen in Lynn? How does this compare to the private sector? I think you can extrapolate and say that about the state and the federal government, too.
Well, the interesting thing about that is there are no private sector teachers, firemen, and police, so it's really hard to draw, you know,
Right.
a specific match there. But I think, you know, the salaries by themselves aren't telling the whole story, because
No.
it's the pension system that really matters significantly.
Well, I mean, I find it offensive, frankly, Paul, that folks that are in politics for a long time, the Clintons, and I'm not trying to pick on them because, you know, of a different political party, that are sitting on $200 million. I can't get my mind around that, because there's no way, if you've never had a job, should you be sitting on $200 million. For that matter, I can't understand how anybody can even rationalize and justify, at least Elizabeth Warren is correct in this, how can former President Barack Obama look you in the face and grab $400,000 for 1 hour speech at Goldman Sachs?
Right. And because it's always the Republicans' fault that
But
we
Paul,
have poverty.
I don't care about party. I think it's one of the reasons why I voted for Trump, because I knew that he didn't need any money. If you want to know the truth, right?
Yeah.
He wouldn't be grabbing. He wouldn't be there at the well trying to look for specific advantage his way. He didn't need any more wealth. So all this disingenuous stuff talking about, oh, he's enhancing his wealth. You know, he doesn't need to. But all these other parasites that did,
That's okay.
Elizabeth Warren has $15 million. Bernie Sanders paid 1/2 of the tax rate that Donald Trump did.
They're just good public servants, Joe.
Yeah, they're public servants. Yeah.
Drinking at the public trough.
Yeah, probably more than that.
Yeah.
So, folks, we've arrived at that time. I want to thank you for all the comments, and I hope we get more. Let us leave you with this. Think about this. Once again, should the issue of sanctuary city, sanctuary school, be up front and forward in this election cycle?
Right.
Want to hear from you? Help us out a little bit.
Yeah, you know, I think we need to be asking the candidates, so that whether it's the mayoral candidates, the councilor candidates, or the school committee candidates, where they stand on this. Because if the vote comes up, now think about this. It's already happened at the school committee, right?
Yes.
If it comes up on the city council, you watch how they vote, and you should decide whether or not you're going to be with the people who voted in favor of sanctuary cities, or are you going to be with the people who voted against?
The organized minority. And by the way, the mayor's coming on our show early June.
June 7th?
Is that correct? So that's a question that she's going to have to answer to also.
Yep, we'll put it right to her. Yep.
Right, that's it. Folks, it's been great. We'll be back in a week. Have a good one.